Hello, Toby. It's John Elledge again. I say again. It's possible that this is going to be on before anyone's heard my voice, so maybe it's John Elledge before, but it's John Elledge from the future, as far as the John Elledge on most of the show is concerned. I'm just popping up to say I have a whole new book out called A History of the World in 47 Borders. The stories behind the lines of our maps, which runs from ancient Egypt to the borders of space, via Rome and China and the Holy Roman Empire and the Schleswig-Holstein question and all sorts of other crazy stuff, like the time Google Maps was implicated in what nearly turned into a war in Central America. It's good, is what I'm saying here. Is it's a good book, and you should buy it. Hopefully some of you will. It will be available in all good bookshops and probably also some evil ones. Okay, thank you.
Well, hello and welcome to Happy Times and Places. Thanks for joining me, Toby Haydock, as I watch an episode of Doctor Who chosen by an illustrious guest. And whilst I commentate along, I have to see if I can identify what that guest's favourite things about the instalment might be.
Hey Toby, it's John Elledge here. I'm a writer and a journalist. For many years I worked at the New Statesman, where I am still a columnist. I'm also the author of two books and counting. The first is the Compendium of Not Quite Everything. The other of which is co-written with the lovely Tom Phillips and is called Conspiracy: A History of Bollocks Theories and How Not to Fall for Them. Anyway, that's who I am. And the story I'm going to talk about today is the season 10 finale from 2017. Starring Peter Capaldi and friends, World Enough and Time and The Doctor Falls.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It occurs to me that I should probably bring this release forward in the schedule. I mean, the patrons will still get it early. That's always the case. But for non-patrons, I may bring it out early because John Elledge, who recorded his contribution to this ages ago, as everybody does. I mean, they were all recorded before the dawn of time, and I'm releasing them very slowly. Has a book out right now. I mean, he writes lots of stuff, John. Very erudite and learned man, with his finger on the pulse of popular culture, but a way of examining it that clever people do. You know, people like me notice which actor was also in that. People like John see the threads that tie things together and write about them when they break. John has written a book called A History of the World in 47 Borders, the stories behind the lines on our maps. I mean, I think you've got to have a brain the size of a planet to even think of doing something like that. And Waterstone says it is eye-opening and entertaining in equal measure. Elledge's geopolitical history of the world is filled with fascinating narratives about our ever-abiding preoccupation with drawing lines and upholding ideas of nationhood. And that is published on the 25th of April 2024. So, you know, imminent. So I will get this out for the general public as close to that date as possible. But it'll be out now. If you're listening to this, go and buy John's book. In fact, it occurs to me that I might do something very timey-wimey, and by the time you hear this, you'll have heard a recorded message from John, because maybe if we get him to plug the book at the beginning of the podcast. So this is all. Now, normally I'd then go, and then I have to re-record this bit so that I actually say, and you've just heard from John there, but it's only, no, because it's a Stephen Moffat episode, so I can say he recorded the first bit after this bit, but then it was inserted back in time, waiting for me here, you know, all of that. It's all very Moffat-y. And it just means that I can get John to plug his book in his own words, rather than me go, it probably did clever in it. And I don't have to re-record this, because that's always a bit of a pain, because once these things are put together, I like to get them out there. You know, if I have to go back into the edit and plug this in and plug that out and then resave that and re-upload that, it all adds to doing things that distract me from doing things I should be doing. Not that I shouldn't be doing this, but I feel, you know, the talking and the watching and the editing to put together a show for you is hopefully enough, and that you'll understand that some things come in late and then get inserted after the event, and that I don't have to then go back and re-record. I probably spent as long explaining that as it would have taken me to re-record it. Anyway, so shall we not get bogged down in, I'm sure you don't care. You're just going, what do you think of The Doctor Falls, Toby Haydock? Well, I will tell you. I'm going to watch it now. It's been a while, a week or so, a couple of weeks since I watched World Enough and Time. I have to take a run-up at new series episodes. I like the comfort of the fact that I know old Who so well. That's not a boast. That's just because I had a wasted childhood in which I watched every single Doctor Who episode more than is healthy. And then when I was a student, I watched every episode of Doctor Who even more than was healthy. And then when I had kids, I watched Doctor Who even more than was healthy. And then when I was a married man, I watched Doctor Who even more than was healthy. But then sort of new Doctor Who came along, and I've watched that more than is healthy. But as time has gone on, obviously in these accumulated 50 years of mine, I've had more opportunities to watch The Mutants than I have The Doctor Falls. And that stands still, that I've watched The Mutants definitely watched The Mutants more times than The Doctor Falls. That is not a reflection on The Doctor Falls, or indeed any of modern Doctor Who. But I certainly haven't revisited these episodes, and these what I think of as relatively recent episodes as well. The Capaldi era, even the Matt Smith, the Capaldi, and the Jodie Whittaker era are all, much less familiar to me than even the Censorites. So let's see how we do. But forgive me if I'm a bit slow with a plot point, or I miss a vital scene that I would have, as I was talking, given a little bit of space to on an episode where I know something's coming up that's going to give me something to chew on. Quite often with these, I'll probably find myself talking through a vital line that's really famous, and you'll be going, why didn't you say that bit? But let's see what happens, and I will try to provide something for you with stuff that I'm less familiar with. But I'm sure John will pop in at the end and say three things terribly clever about his choices of favourite things about the episode, and let's see if I can match any of his, and at least emerge with some dignity that I've chosen the same things as a very learned man who I've actually only met once, I think, John, at the BFI, one of those do's. But he's been kind enough to contribute, and aren't I lucky? So, luckier than the Doctor's about to be, because he's about to. Well, I mean, as the American listeners might not be aware, this episode's called "The Doctor Autumns" in this country, but obviously you know it as "The Doctor Falls." No, that's very rare. Mark this moment. That was me actually dunning a joke. Yes, I know. I'm one of those comedians that tends not to sully himself with your actual jokes. It's just whimsy and hope, usually, that gets me through my 20 minutes on stage. But there, I actually done you a joke. So I hope you enjoyed it. And now we're going to watch The Doctor Falls. And we're going to press play in 3, 2, 1. Oh, that actually worked first time. I love it. We have, now I have it silent. That doesn't really matter. Oh, here we go. We have a recap of last week's, and yes, somebody mentioned in my on my Patreon in the comments that I hadn't, I don't think, fixated upon enough, is that the Master is disguised, John Simm's Master is disguised for absolutely no reason and puts on a silly voice, much like he does in Time Flight, and yet it seems so much more, well, it's much more of an intelligent story, and yet it has that joy of embracing that I didn't even bother to sort of talk about. Why the hell is he doing that? There's absolutely no need, because it's a lot of fun in a way that I'm not sure Khalid, I mean, I suppose Khalid is, but Khalid is fun because it's folly. It's not deliberately sort of arch and silly in the way that I think that mastering is. So here we are. This is one of those things that Stephen Moffat does quite a lot, where part 2 takes place, in a completely different location and introduces new characters and doesn't continue directly from the cliffhanger, and it's his way. It's his equivalent, I suppose, of Robert Holmes's thing of going, do a 6-parter by having 4 parts and then 2 new parts, if you like. This is extraordinary, isn't it? He is so good at dreaming up horrific imagery, and the directors, match it. Scarecrows are scary. Of course they are. We've had scary scarecrows in Doctor Who, notably in the brilliant Human Nature Family of Blood, but also in that bit of Mark of the Rani. But this, I think, there is something about animated corpses, isn't there? And scarecrows are sort of animated corpses. There's something about animated shop window dummies, about dollies, all of those things. And scarecrows are a sort of mixture of all of those things. They're like walking dead bodies, but they're also, empty sackcloth. So they're like, reanimated toys or whatever. And of course, the reveal of what they are later is even more frightening. But it's a brilliant way to open the story. That's a lovely tree. I'm thinking sadly of that tree that the sycamore, that was the sycamore gap that some fool chopped down just to despoil for no other reason. Makes me very sad, that. Anyway, let's not get into that. If you don't know, it's the tree that's in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, if you're American listeners. It's part of a beautiful shot there, and somebody chopped it down for larks. And people, people said sad things on the internet about it, and then people say, oh, what's the problem? No law's been broken. And it just desperately saddens me that we have... Anyway, why am I talking through that when there's that beautiful image? What an absolutely extraordinary opening that was. That beautiful image of the Mondasian Cybermen. I always think of the Junkyard Demon when I see Mondasian Cybermen outside of the 10th Planet, because that was a Doctor Who comic strip which had a cliffhanger where there was the reanimation of an old-fashioned, as they were seen then, Cybermen, and that reclaimed those Cybermen in a way and made them seem cool. Whereas, as I say, on the cover of the 10th Planet book, and the talk amongst my elder brothers was those were a bad design, and thank goodness they improved them, and look how old-fashioned Doctor Who was back in the day, that the Cybermen looked like that, and they've actually managed to become better and cooler now. But that's an excellent pre-title sequence. You've got a bit of... I love the sort of spaceship in the sky. That's a bit like the Steel Sky, which is that beguiling title of episode 1 of the Ark, and that idea that you have an outside, a real airy environment, but is actually contained on a spaceship. I'm not sure I ever quite buy that those rolling fields are in a ship, but that's my shortcoming as an audience member, as a person that's grown up in the countryside, that even though they go to great lengths to sort of show the steel sky and suggest that. This is very effectively and economically done. I love these black and white, quick cuts and shots to show this is how we've got to where we got. Nardole has managed to escape. The Doctor has been subjugated by the two masters. There's some really strange imagery in this, but it really, really works. But I loved that pre-title shot of the Cyberman. We'll come to know what that represents. Well, I suppose we already do, but the Cyberman with the Doctor in its arms. And now, in typical Moffat style, we're going back to see how we got there. Now, I think I've said before, I'm not always over the moon with timey-wimey storytelling. I understand it's clever. I think you can do some brilliant flourishes with it. I think you can reverse expectation. I think that happens very cleverly in A Christmas Carol and things like that. But I'll also think it can sometimes be a bit unnecessarily complicated, or it does a flourish that wears its cleverness on its sleeve, but it is a cleverness that exists only in rules that you've made up yourself. So you haven't really pulled one over us because you've moved the goalposts, sort of thing. And I sometimes, for my escapist fun, which I want Doctor Who to be, I sometimes just want a story with a beginning and a middle and an end in that order. But I am also quite conservative. I'm a Doctor Who fan. And Doctor Who fans, of course, always talk about the huge possibilities that the show has to offer to stretch its format and do different things. And I am one of those, and there are many who then is a total hypocrite and goes, but actually I kind of like it when it does the things I'm used to it doing. but I actually think I think it it set its stall out here. It's gone. We've got this image of the Doctor with the Cyberman. Let's see how we get there, and it's not messing about with it. As I say, that escape of Nardole was done very quickly, elegantly, and economically. I think, and I have to say, I do love what Stephen Moffat has done with the Master, because, again, I love my Master being Roger Delgado. I think he's my favourite Master, even though he wasn't my first. Ainley was my first, but I think Delgado is so good. But I think the way that Moffat writes and presents the Master as this sort of, oddball, unhinged individual, but without it being wacky, without it being, well, I mean, no, Michelle Gomez is very wacky, but there's a beautiful strangeness to what she does. It's an original take on the Master, I think, that actually is wholly consistent with how the character works within the show, and unexpected, and yet seems so right, and bold. And I think the idea of having these two Masters together is an absolutely brilliant flourish, because of course we've Doctors together is old hat. I love these, and that's quite fun, isn't it? How the clumpety of the new Cybermen has been worked into these old Cybermen. And I like Murray Gold's score here, and when I'm in the room, I'm winning. I like that. This and I have to say, I think this is really clever. I mean, he's had to have worked very, very quickly, but I do like it when the Doctor does a flourish where he goes, all of this stuff is hiding in plain sight. I had the opportunity to do this, and I played upon your weaknesses in order to do it. So when you saw me, tied up to a wheelchair and seemingly defeated, I was actually always one step ahead of you. Rachel Talele's direction of this is absolutely phenomenal. But these are 10th planet Cybermen. These are the Cybermen made of cloth with human hands, with shiny, loose-fitting suits. And I think they're absolutely fantastic. This rooftop stuff, I think, is thrilling and really exciting. The lighting is beautiful. That forlorn Bill Cyberman at the back is just a slightly haunting image. I'm in two minds about the kind of, you didn't count on one thing, me, and all of that business, and the Doctor being kind of, I'm a legend, look me up. I have a conflicted history with that. I love that. The words, and even the sound effect. I love Michelle Gomez. There's a broken quality about her as well. She's majestic. And I believe the conflict that's going on inside her, but she also manages to be funny and scary and sad and broken all at the same. I love that, the way when he holds her hand and she's not. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think it works on so many levels. I think she's extraordinary. I think it's a brilliant inventive use of the Master. I love a hero moment. Nardole there with the shuttle ready to take them. I love it when the sort of humble, secondary comedy sidekick character gets to do a hero moment. That's always a good thing in big blockbuster Hollywood movies. So I like it when Doctor Who manages to do that with the format too. That's horrible. That's really well done though. That's really the effects there are excellent. And I love and of course that bit with the light, the laser coming from the light at the top of the head is very like the back cover illustration of the 10th Planet, and it was always very exciting when a Target book had a back cover illustration as well. And that haunting figure of the Bill Cyberman in the background, comes good there. She's great. For all that, she's conflicted. She's also pragmatic and dangerous. Don. That's so funny. That's so brilliant. That because the master is evil, the master is callous, the master is a murderer. But I also like the fact that gets translated into can always also be really pettily unkind in a way that doesn't really matter, but is horrible. And then does it twice. And then you have a hero moment of Bill the Cyberman holding the ladder and stopping them going away. And again, it's another of those sort of Hollywood punch the air. Yay! It's a hero moment. And what a great image that is. I think this is absolutely terrific. Oh, and here is how we got to this. And it's beautiful. Just the use of mist. I mean, it looks fantastic. And I love that the steel sky. And I also love Nardole's bobble hat. It's a lovely that's the beauty of Doctor Who, is you can have sort of apparently conflicting bits of imagery that all sort of coalesce together in this melange of kind of it looks so right, and yet it's a melange of things that are conflicting, like a police box with a gleaming spaceship interior. All of that. Moffat likes having kids in stuff, but that adds to the sort of two things are important there. One is because Doctor Who gets you when you're a kid, so having and there weren't many child actors in classic Doctor Who, and I think the way that television is made now makes that easier, and I think there's a quality of child actor available too, but I understand the drive to have kids in it to bring Doctor Who back to the fact that I think we do associate it with our childhood. It's the fact that Doctor Who is associated with my childhood is a hugely important aspect of it for me, because it takes me back to a time when I was innocent and sad and scared, and yet also thrilled and excited and happy, and anything was possible, and I was uncynical. All of this. Childhood is a huge mixture of comfort and absolute terror, and of course that's what Doctor Who is as well. This is so well done. Pearl Mackie is a really, really good actor. She has a vocal quality, a quality to her voice, that sort of dusky quality to her voice that can sort of break. That has a quirky tinge to it as well, but also a melancholy when needed. The fawns and rich beige. Yeah, it's not beige, is it? It's a sort of tawny hue to the light coming through the curtains. There is absolutely beautiful lighting, and I also love a Doctor Who where people are besieged. This is a so it's not a base, is it? It's a sort of Mormon community under siege, or but sandbags, getting all weapons available, bedding in, hunkering down for an attack. That's thrilling, exciting, back to basics Doctor Who for me, which I think really, really, really works alongside this terribly sad mystery around Bill. Because we of course we know what has happened here, but the fact that we're seeing it as her is stopping us really totally accepting it really, and until now, because we're still seeing Bill, of course, and that's what she sees. And this is so sad, and this is so well done, and again it's a brilliant visual flourish, and very cleverly, of course, we see in the corner that the hands as well. And there's a real tragedy to this that gets to the heart of what the Cybermen are. The Cybermen aren't just robots. The Cybermen are a removal of humanity. Although, of course, you're being kind. Nothing wrong with being kind. There's not. So why were you such a prick for the first season, Doctor Who? Uh, he even eats his jelly babies a bit like Tom Baker, open mouth, open mouth. I think I was always taught to eat with my mouth closed, but there's something quite sort of gutsy about the open-mouthed, slightly insolent chew of a jelly baby that Doctor Who does. I don't approve, but yet it seems kind of right. He's very good, Peter Capaldi. He is such an accomplished actor. That he's doing the sort of brave face, but also acknowledging underneath that the solemnity and difficulty of the situation. He's quite inscrutable in many ways, and yet there's a lot lurking just beneath the surface. And he looks magnificent. I love these two leads. I think they're great. I would have happily had more with them. But yes, it does. It gets to the heart of what it means to be a Cyberman. Although, obviously, the Bill that we see here is not as we expect a Cyberman to behave. But that's okay. I think it's a sort of translation technique, isn't it? It's a reminder of the character that we're losing. And it's sort of really tragic, because we can see somebody human. We can see what she was. The humanity is much more than just a biological entity, but she's got all the things that humans have, like teeth and curls and proper eyes and all of that. And now she's a rubber-fingered semi-automaton, and it's. I think it's really disturbing, but it's also really sad. But it's it's cleverly set amongst the the backdrop of what's an action adventure episode. And this is kind of what A Castle Made of You. That is a brilliant piece of writing, and she's standing. That's a lovely sort of metaphor. And this idea, and Doctor Who, quite often is about what it means to be human, either in contrast to the alien strangeness of the Doctor. It's either about our shortcomings and the limitations that we impose upon ourselves, but it's also about the indomitability of the human spirit and a celebration. So it's a celebration, I think, at its best, Doctor Who can be a celebration of our potential and what we're best at and what we do that no other living thing does. Those small, beautiful things that being human is all about, as well as also, a lesson about not falling for our, not being dictated to by the limitations of our imagination or societal mores or limitations, whatever. Which is, I think, is a great way of examining the human condition, and also quirkily sort of looking at what it's like to be people. Now, I'm not saying that any writer of Doctor Who sits down and deliberately tries to examine that, and they would be foolhardy so to be. But it's because of the nature of the program, this quirky action adventure that has monsters in it, and what makes a monster: a lack of humanity, a removal of humanity, a perversion of humanity. It's a side effect of a great many of the staples of the show, that it does sort of shine a light, and again, not necessarily in a lofty manner, on what humanity is all about. I think this stuff is really beautiful. I think I know, and we've seen a cyber tier before. It's that's become a bit of a thing in the new series, but I don't have a problem with that, because Tracy Ann Cyberman cried an oily cyber tear as well, didn't she? I don't mind that. He's so good. I think as he's getting older, I think he looks magnificent, and I'm so glad he came back. I didn't know I wanted John Sim to come back, and yet it really works in this story to bring the two of them together. He's so mean, old Braz. Oh. Might as well rile the fridge. Moffat is so good at lines. She is so good at emotion. That's some brilliant imagery in all of these shots, and I think it's actually quite nice having had the sort of claustrophobia of the spaceship last week. Again, it's not just that he's given us new settings and people for this episode. It's just little things like John Sim having his hands in his pockets, which I don't think I can imagine previous masters doing, and yet just seems so right. But regeneration energy, you see, it's everything is sort of teased, and there is a sort of we do feel like we're going towards a climax, but I think having had the claustrophobic, spaceship set first episode to this habit that he has of shifting things about a bit for the second episode, has stretched here to also making this a very outdoorsy thing. I know it's inside, which gives it, and you've got two things going on here as well. They're kind of settled here, which is nice. It's making us comfortable in the environment, because this is generally this seems like a place that people live and are carving out a kind of frontier life for themselves. So it's somewhere that is sort of feels safe, but it feels real, but it also feels like somewhere that needs protecting. And of course, it's incumbent upon the Doctor to protect Samantha Spyro and all of her mates and those children, because they've kind of led the Cybermen here. So it's all very useful stuff for a Doctor Who adventure. And this is quite, grown up stuff for a Doctor Who companion to be saying, I don't want to be alive if I'm not human. This is a Saturday tea time show. I know. I mean, I think some of the episodes of the Capaldi season went out about midnight, didn't they? No, I know they didn't. Don't write in, but they seem very, very late. And again, I'm conflicted about what I loved as a kid when Doctor Who flirted with stuff that was unsuitable, and I still love, the bit in Image of the Fendal where Max Steil kills himself, because you're like, well, that's an unusual thing to Doctor Who, and it makes the 10-year-old in me think that, the big kids at school would think I was terribly grown up, or my brothers would go like, oh, this is strong stuff for the young and all of that. And when you're young, you so want to be older and cooler and be able to handle things that are adult. Of course, as I get older, I now so want to be, uncynical and uncreaky, and actually realize the joy in pure innocence and pure enjoyment, and also admire more things that manage to be entertaining and exciting and thrilling without doing, within the limitations of still being suitable for children. And that, of course, gives us some of the very best writing in all of the sort of shows that people like us is that often its ingenuity is what makes the writing good. It's writing around its limitations, either of budget or of what it can show and say and do, that makes it the show it is. The reason that Doctor Who is brilliant. Doctor Who wouldn't be as good, I don't think, if it didn't have to be suitable for children. That's part of its appeal. I like these versions of the new Cybermen as well. These they're slightly more streamlined, aren't they? They're slightly less Art Deco and clunky than the ones that when they came back in Rise of the Cybermen. A weapons grade version to come after us, and then we could evacuate the Waltons back there if you're feeling ridiculous. That is such a good line for so many reasons. I love the way that the Missy thinks he's ridiculous for being heroic. I love the fact that the being ahead, the time element of what's happening on the spaceship is now working to the Cybermen's advantage, and all of that is a use of the sort of time bending way that Moffat tells his story, that that works in favor of the bad guys and to the detriment of our heroes, and that's really exciting. And now we have a feeling that things are really escalating, time's running out, and we've got all sorts of different Cybermen as well, which is pretty cool. Would I have loved to have had an Earthshock Cyberman or two in there? Yeah, definitely, and an Invasion one. I still think that the Invasion Cybermen are the best, but I'm just being silly. That's only just occurred to me. It didn't occur to me when I watched it the first time, and I think it's just because I've been listening to a review of some of the Moffat Dalek stories, and of course they did bring back old Daleks, but they also had old Daleks that were represented by new Daleks, didn't they? In Asylum of the Daleks, where they were going, here's an old Dalek, and you go, then why is it a brass one? And then that was readdressed, wasn't it? When they did have actual old designs in The Magician's Apprentice and that. So there's no reason why you would have any more old Cybermen, but I think it would have been quite fun to have a moon-based Cyberman in there, and a wheel. I like the wheel in space Cybermen as well. I love the Master doing his makeup. I don't know why, but I think it's brilliant because, of course, Doctor Who villains do, dress sharply and do sometimes have dark eyeliner and do make themselves look spooky, but we never see that. And I suppose we're not really supposed to think about it. And yet in having that and doing that, it kind of nods to it, but without it. It doesn't cheapen the show. It's not a cheeky wink. It's not a self-indulgent moment. I just think it's a little sprinkle of beauty that I don't know quite what it says, but I like that it says it. And I love the way that the Nardole, the computer geek, sort of rather coolly sort of shows what he's doing. He's not, he's using his skills to blow things up, but doing it in a very casual way, and he's very much impressing Samantha Spiro. And it's weird because she doesn't have much. She's a great actress. We're very lucky to have her in Doctor Who. And she doesn't have much time to establish that character or to actually establish this curious sort of relationship that she has with Nardole. But actually with great economy, she does it. And you kind of it's a kind of, it's not quite as bad as a Leela and Andred situation, but it's a, the episode can't waste too much time on it. And you need somebody good, and she comes in and does all that is required of her, and I think does a sterling job without it being a particularly brilliant part or a showy performance. But she does exactly what the episode requires her to do. I love the relationship between these two. You see, and this is again this is where the timey-wimey stuff, which I do think is sometimes a bit cheaty. I do think it's sometimes a bit self-congratulatory, but that's a judgment. Why would you say that? Why can't something just be clever? Why does one have to cast aspersions on the cleverness? Because I think, again, when you're making the rules, but is it making? I don't know. Look, I'm conflicted about it. I'd love to travel back in time and tell myself what I really think about timey-wimey stuff, because I do vacillate, because I do think that sort of storytelling is clever and it's a legitimate thing to do. If you've got a show that's about a time traveller, you can't be blamed for trying to tell stories that have a time travel element to them. So I don't know why I'm so resistant. And again, it may be my own conservatism, and one has to acknowledge that sometimes one's objections to something are innate and nothing to do with reasoning at all, and not necessarily correct. Well, I'm happy with that. I don't mind being wrong. I love all of this stuff. I love the way that they've kind of invoked American frontiersmanship. Again, it's something that's a sort of alien situation, but that has, echoes through costume and through design with something recognizable to us as humans from our history. And I think what I like about this is that it's through, as I say, it seems slightly more American to me, which makes Doctor Who seem a little less parochial than, if it had been a, if it had tried to be, Edwardian England or whatever. It's just a bit refreshing on the eye, even though it is old fashioned. Oh, it's so sad. And it's so lovely. Nardole is great because Matt Lucas is a brilliant comedian, but he has an innocence and he has a heart, but because he's comic relief and very, very good comic relief, when you see him being brave or when you see him being kind, it seems extra brave and it seems extra kind because that's he's there because he's largely the funny one. This is great stuff. Look at that. And we know that's the Cybermen bursting through. And this really feels like the the S is hitting the F. Doctor Who doesn't like guns, but he has his guns and he has his cake and eats it. He has his guns and he fires them. Apple. I can't remember what happens with the apple. It's been so long since it's not that long since I saw it. I watched this in preparation for doing this, but I had to build myself up to that, and now I've had to build myself up to this. Me and Sis are off now. I'm definitely choosing the two masters as a favourite thing of this episode. That's my number. That's definitely my number one thing about this. It's the thing that hit me the first time round as being such a piece of genius, and I think it's my favourite of John Simm's performances. And I just think she's extraordinary, this woman. I think she has such an energy. And it's enough that she's got this quirky, psychotic thing about her. But in making her examine herself, as this season's story arc does, it explains why the Doctor and the Master have this sort of almost symbiotic relationship, but certainly this relationship of mutual respect, some kind of bond that they have. And Capaldi's brilliant in this scene. I love this speech that he does because it's right. But it's done without it being a sort of cloying moral speech. And there's a sort of desperation too, and the fact that the Master reacts. Oh, he's so good. I love that. I think it's great. And this boils down to the fundamentals of why Doctor Who does what Doctor Who does. I fight to try and I do the best I can. I try and stop people dying. And it's clever because you think that Missy is gonna, you almost imagine her to now knock him out and go, okay, we're gonna do this. And in fact, every time I watch it, I think she's gonna. And I only know, I do know, of course, I know that she's not going to. But I think it's so well done. Look at her, stunning eyes she's got as well. You sort of know that the Sim Master's gonna go nah, but you kind of think, is she gonna pull him in the right direction? Beautifully shot. Look at that dirty shoulder as well. Dirty shoulder is when you don't need me to explain that, do you? I'm not going to patronise you, but that's a beautiful choice because it has her, in focus, but in the back. And he's got a sort of cold insolence about him, and a slight sadism there as well. Whereas she's being buffeted here. But she's also she's almost begging him not to appeal to her better nature because she's frightened of it, which is really, I mean, this is really sophisticated stuff. Doctor Who can often be, very simplistic, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It's nice to have, a hissable baddie and a funny goodie. But I think what Moffat's asked his actors to do here and what he does with his characters here is really effective. And I understand those people who sort of, I love this bit, thanks for trying. Oh, I love that. That really makes me, there's something really profound about that, I think, and really beautiful, darkly beautiful, sadly beautiful. Thanks for trying. It's a sort of acknowledgement, but also a surrender. Love the apple bombs. Very Doctor Who. Love the apple bombs. And I do like these thinner-faced Cybermen. They're much more sort of sleek and aerodynamic to me than the ones that came back in Rise of the Cybermen, which we also have, don't we? Sort of. But yeah, exploding apple bombs is beautifully Doctor Who, and there's something about the apple that's sort of slightly biblical and goes back to innocence. And this feels like, if we win here, we can start again. Humanity can start again, life can start again, morality can start again, goodness can start again. So for a story that is about the end of a Doctor, or the beginning of the end of a Doctor, the fact that the other story it's telling feels, as I say, this frontiership of the American life and the apple and all of that seems like, it does seem like building the sort of very humanity that the show tries to celebrate. I love that he has an active role in seeing off the cyber threat. And also, it gives us as watchers of Doctor Who, who say, well, it's not a thing about guns. The Doctor doesn't have guns, but it allows us to have scenes with loads of Cybermen being blown up and loads of action and all of that. And again, beautiful light through boarded up windows. That's why they've come for your children again, because they've come for children. It seems somehow, more terrifying. Because there is an innocent, children are innocent, children are young, all of that. I'm surrounded. It means that everyone's looking at me. Very good. He's very good at lines like that, Stephen Moffat. So yeah, I had started talking about something to do with the Doctor, hadn't I, when the Doctor was talking to the Master, and kind of went off on a segue, and now I'll probably never get back there. What plan? Oh, right. So yes. And again, I'm a sucker for a you go, I'll stay. Whether it's I'll knock you out and put you in the lift, or I'll force you to leave. And this is one of those goodbyes where, somebody has to be spared. Silly tin men. You see, this is the sort of thing that gets me. I get a bit of a lump in my throat and a tear in my eye at this sort of, which is very sort of, which one of us is stronger? That's, again, there's something I think very beautiful and honest in that, and I think it's beautifully acted. The way that he's not looking at him, and the way that he knows that the Doctor is right. And it's very human. Right. Again, Moffat gets stick for being too clever by half and too sarky quippy. But I think he's very good at the action. The S, the S is hitting the F, climax stuff. But he's also very good at the human stuff. I am a sucker for a bit. Again, I'm not soap soppiness. I'm not bothered about that. But within the Doctor Who format, the kind of the self-sacrifice, the somebody having to do something brave, you stay, I'll go, all of that sort of stuff, when it's done really well, is it's basic stuff for sort of action adventure Hollywood type films. But I love it when it's in Doctor Who, because it fits the action adventure format and it gives it a bit of emotion. But emotion that is based on people staying to face explosions and all of that. I never will. Oh. You see, I think that's beautiful, and I think Nardole, who came in as sort of comic relief, well, he came in as a one-episode character, didn't he? I love the fact that he finds within himself, he's the funny little ball, funny man, who has it within himself to be heroic and also be quite wise there, and wise enough to know that the Doctor was correct. I think it's really smartly and really beautifully done. And I think sometimes Moffat is underestimated for how good he is at the sweet stuff. But I do understand those who say, well, hang on, we could talk about that in a bit. Park the kind bit, because this bit I absolutely love. I think, it's also a bit naughty, because there is a suggestion of sort of, would the Master like to screw the Master, which is a bit weird and perverted, and I don't like it when Doctor Who gets too sexy. I don't mind unspoken sexy, but I don't like sort of childish sexy. But I think this was brilliant. The fact that she kills him, she kills herself, in what you think, well, you don't know what she's doing. Was she being intimate, whatever? But yeah, she pulled a fast one on herself, and he's admiring of that. And there's mutual respect because they're the same person. She's so hurt that she's had to do it. I think it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I didn't see that coming. I didn't see it coming that the Master would kill the Master. I think it's an absolutely brilliant way to end Mrs. Ark. I thought the Master was brought back way too quickly in the Chibnall era. I thought this should have been allowed time to have been a proper ending for the character for a while. But we can get it, and that's no reflection on Sacha Dhawan, who I think is great fun and a very sort of modern day jokerish type of Master. But I thought it smacked of indecent haste and not reading really the room. I don't see how you could watch this and go, well, the first thing we need to do is not let this sort of percolate and rest. But that's another story. But I love everything about the two Masters in this episode. But yeah, I do understand people who might go, yeah, all right, all this be kind stuff. The Capaldi Doctor spent a lot of his early period not being very kind at all. So it's a bit rich for you to say be kind. But characters are allowed to develop. Characters are allowed to be complex. Characters are allowed to be contradictory. Remember, and I think more and more, commentators seem to think that programs should be telling us how to behave rather blatantly by having our good characters behave in a certain way that is unimpeachable because it's a manual on how you should behave. Well, that's rather didactic for me. And also, get over yourself. If you want to write something that is a lesson in how to behave, then don't write a drama. We can infer things from a thing a character might do, but characters are supposed to be contradictory. Characters are supposed to sometimes do things that we as an audience go, oh, well, I wouldn't do that, or oh, they shouldn't have done that. If we only have characters that behave in a way that we should behave, then I think the writer is acting as God, and I don't think Russell T Davies or Stephen Moffat do that. I think that says more about the commentators. Oh, and he killed Missy as well. I think, and you really feel it. The Master killed the Master. I mean, who else could kill him? I love this. The mutual respect, the sardonic gallows humour, the sort of cruel inevitability of it, you know. Yeah, it is our perfect ending. We shoot ourselves in the back. So don't bring the character back, you know, a year or so later. For flip's sake. Beautifully done. And again, the thought that goes into going, and of course he's getting into a lift, so we need to see that descent. I mean, when the Master dies, where would the Master go? Down, of course. And it brings it back to that biblical thing as well. And then there's that sort of strangely beautiful image of the dying or dead Missy. Absolutely fantastic. I think that is dealt with brilliantly by the writer, the actors, the director. Absolutely superb. Congratulations, everybody. And of course, and I think this is a clever flourish as well, that we see the start of the final battle from those safely at a distance away from it, and it's a whacking great explosion, and you go, that's what they've escaped from. But then it's like, oh Christ, but yeah, our guy's in the thick of that. Oh, in the thick of it. And he's not going to Malcolm Tucker his way out of this one. And yes, the sonic screwdriver is basically being used as a laser gun, and I have a conflicted feeling about that as well. I don't want that, you know. And again, if people were to say about the kind thing, we'll also say, yeah, I don't want guns, but you've got a thing here that is essentially a gun. So again, you know, you can prate about ethics, but you know, you contradict yourself within your own drama, which you know, I know, you know, commentators who reject sort of the finger-wagging liberalism that the show can occasionally do, which of course ties in with my finger-wagging liberal politics, might go, yeah, but you say all of that kind stuff and not having a gun stuff, and you blow things up, so actually you're just a hypocrite. And I can understand why people don't, you know, reject you know, didactic liberals, but because there can be an element of hypocrisy to that, and why people might prefer the Doctor to say the Cybermen are really bad and we need to get guns and blow them to bits. And I know people say, well, then those people don't understand what the show is really about. You go, well, the show is also not really about sitting there and singing Kumbaya, because Doctor Who does tend to blow up the baddies quite a lot. So, and I always think anybody who says, I'll tell you what the show is actually really about, is always on a bit of a sticky wicket, especially because when they do it, they do it in an annoying voice I've just given them. But so you know, there are things in here that I like that if I were to be writing an essay, I might take again, you know. But I'm not writing an essay. I'm watching an exciting episode of Doctor Who. I think that final sequence of him going through the woods is thrilling, and it's dangerous, and it brings, you know, a real sense of climax to it. Although I think he'd be a bit more singed after that explosion. But again, he's Doctor Who, and his clothes can regenerate. I'm sure we know his clothes can regenerate. So there we go. That's fine. I've already explained that. That's beautiful. Look, and here's the advantage of having it the outside, and the sun is shining, and it's you know, it does feel sort of cleansed. You know, it does feel like a rebirth, and the fact that there are daffodils out and all of that, it does feel like, you know, spring. You know, the world, although it's not the world, it's, you know, the inside of a spaceship. So it's no longer on the edge of destruction. And yeah, there are kids, and there are kids still alive. He's saved the kids, and I love that phrase that cropped up earlier about the humans being farmed. Is quite a disturbing idea, isn't it? That again ties brilliantly in with the Cybermen. And look, here's a sort of that's very evocative, isn't it? That reminds me a bit of the Band of Brothers episode set in the snow. I know that's not snow. I know that's ash, the ash of destruction. But it does again have that kind of blasted, cold World War II or World War One even feel about it. Where the stark landscape that has been, absolutely scorched or by in this case by fire, but also it has the suggestion of those really cold fronts as well. Oh, she's so good. She's so good. And I have to say, I definitely, I was really painted into a corner here. I didn't see any of this coming. But, he explains it well in that how she's, why she has managed to hold on to her humanity within the cyber frame. That was in those scenes between them in the barn. That did it. I kind of bought that. And this was seeded, right from the beginning. I always slightly worry about, a finale episode that pays off with something that happened in an opening episode. But that's the pathetic fan of me who needs to get over himself. And she's really good. But it is a second Doctor Who companion who has died and has then not died, but still isn't really alive, that gets to travel through space and time with a sort of, with them both as immortal but not quite human anymore space lesbians. I mean, only in Doctor Who, I guess. It is a bit, as I say, it is a bit of an echo of what happened with Clara, isn't it? I think I prefer this version, partially because this ties in back with Bill's very first episode. And I think I'm more satisfied with this, Clara not really being alive or human anymore. Ashildea didn't make a huge impression on me either. And it just seemed like he just couldn't bear to kill Clara, or have her leave or anything. Whereas Bill seems to have a much more sort of contained. Clara, I think, seemed to me to maybe be a continued addendums to a story that he couldn't bear to finish, whereas this, I think, has clear lines as a story for the characters. She's really good. And made enough of an impression in the first episode for her return to sort of to make this return, and she, yes, and I buy that explanation of I can make you human again. It's just atoms. That again seems to me, because I think Bill has survived if she survived as somebody like me. That's do you know what I mean? Somebody who breathes, tastes, has a heartbeat, has a pulse. More than a sort of walking sapphic space cadaver, which is what what a surviving cyber person would be. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's slightly harmed by what went before with Clara, but I think is a more satisfying version of that. And I like the fact that she also, as far as she's concerned, the Doctor's she said goodbye to the Doctor and kind of finished their story off. It's not that there's anything unresolved there. She gets to say goodbye. And it's really touchingly done. I love Bill. I think she's a great companion. I think Pearl Mac is brilliant. Yeah, I mean, as I say, I find it difficult to identify with, space hopping beings, and there is a part of me that sort of goes, no, when a companion leaves the Doctor, I think they have to get back to earthly life, but actually realise it's not as bad as that, but that they have potential within their earthly life to be better than they were before, because, again, we are only hidebound by our lack of imagination or our limited frontiers or whatever. And that Doctor Who shows you there is far more you can do with your life. There's far more you can do with your budget. There's far more, I love that sort of Legopolis thing of having the clips of the Doctor. And this is really giddy. Suddenly we get handheld. We get the invocation of "I don't want to go." Because, and again, it's and I like, we've never really had a regeneration that kind of, hasn't happened in the regeneration story. It's like, oh no, we need another story to make me do the regeneration that I should be doing now. I think that's an original take on it without messing about too much with regeneration. I think it's a sort of cheeky, it's a cheeky breakaway from form, but that is actually perfectly suitable and perfectly in keeping with the show, not only sort of science fiction wise, but almost sort of thematically and metaphorically for what they want to do with the story and the character that they want to tell next time. And Bill has just met somebody from her first episode to round off her story, and we're about to have Doctor Who, the latest Doctor Who, meet the very first Doctor Who in order to round off each of their respective stories. I think that's a terrific idea. And I think this ending that we're about to see is gorgeous. But yes, about companions leaving and going off to space, I'm not saying that all companions should have to leave in the same way, but I am more compelled by a story. I think there's a tendency with modern Who to say these companions leave and they go on having the same sort of adventures that they were having in Doctor Who, because we can't bear the idea that they would be going back to sort of ordinary life. Well, I think that's very patronising about ordinary life. I think it's the whole point is saying, no, you go back to your ordinary life, or you don't again have the same level of fun and adventure as you do with the Doctor, because that is a unique experience. The Doctor is a unique person. The show is a unique set of circumstances. And that to just say, oh, well, you're doing it off screen now because the actors who play you want to go and do something else, is to me not as compelling a use of the format as going, well, no, there is a sacrifice, there is a loss, there is a compromise. And I think sometimes the modern show gets so bound up with its own mythology and its own wonderfulness, because I think it is wonderful. It says, well, I can't bear to make those characters not keep having exciting times. But I think you have to be braver than that. When Tosin Cole and Bradley Walsh left, and that, oh, we're going to be off to have space adventures with our, well, no. Rose Tyler defending the Earth, Bill doing that. It's almost like our very clever writers behind the show sort of can't bear to return their beloved characters and actors to the lack of adventure of everyday life. But to me, that is kind of the point. And as I say, I don't want to be prescriptive and go, and every time a companion leaves, that should be the case. But I think there's an over tendency these days for the companion to go off and have more exciting adventures off screen, which, as I say, smacks to me slightly of us not wanting to, punish our characters or our actors or whatever. But actually, my point is that it's not a punishment to return home and live your earthbound life, because Doctor Who, and I'm telling you what Doctor Who's about, which isn't really about Doctor Who. What Doctor Who is about is having distracting, exciting, fun, child-friendly, but adult entertaining adventures in time and space full of zest and fun and jeopardy and adventure. But what it speaks to being about beyond that, to me, is about saying, because it's a show with a limited budget but infinite scope, is about saying we don't have much when we're making it, but also when we're living our lives as people. And we are limited by budget, imagination, human frailty, all of those things. And yet that is no excuse not to go out there and do your best, make something brilliant with almost nothing. And when you can't make something brilliant, do what you do with a sense of humour. When when your sense of humour is being eroded, retain your sense of humanity and what is right and what is decent, but never take yourself too seriously. And in so doing, actually, you take life very, very seriously indeed. But don't be don't be po-faced. There's a lot of po-facedness about these days, especially actually about Doctor Who, which I find bizarre. But also, I don't like Doctor Who to be self-mocking, and I'm not one of those who goes, Doctor Who's great because it's rubbish. No, it's not. It's not. It's absolutely brilliant. But what it isn't is humourless. What it isn't is didactic. What Doctor Who is about is going, make the best, the funnest, the most thrilling, the most exciting, and the maddest stuff that you can, even if you're, a boring old human living in a semi-detached house in 21st century England. Do you know what I mean? Or wherever it is that you happen to be from. I'm talking about where I'm from now. Doesn't matter. Make what you can. And that's what Doctor Who does as well. We're making a program with 21st century equipment in studios with limited number of actors. We're trying to do special effects that we haven't got film resources to do, and yet we never we never try and sell ourselves short. We'll still have loads of big cyber battle and a spaceship with fields in it and all of that. That's what it's about, if you want to say what Doctor Who's about. But not only how Doctor Who, that's not just about how Doctor Who is made, but it seems to me is about what happens within the Doctor Who universe as well. Is about making the best of everything. Anyway, wanged on a bit there, didn't I? So, what are my favourite 3 things? Is it 3 things we're coming up with, John? What are my favourite, or is it 3 things and a bonus? I can't remember my own rules. Well, I'm certainly my favourite thing about that episode and about that whole 2-parter is the 2 masters. I mean, their relationship, John Sim painting his eyes, and Missy saying thank you for trying. Oh, good Lord. I mean, I could have chosen 3 things that were 3 things that they do. The death, the fact that she kills him, the fact that he kills her, the fact that he shoots her in the back, the fact that he descends to hell, the fact that she hugs him and stabs him. I mean, good Lord. So what have we got here? We've got the Doctor Falls 1, the Doctor Falls 2, the Doctor Falls 3, and an overall thing. So I've got to choose 4 things. And looking at the way these are labelled, yes, it suggests to me there's 3 Doctor Falls and 1 overall thing. So I am going to choose... Well, yeah, number 1, the 2 Masters. Everything about the 2 Masters. I've said it all. Yeah, from Michelle Gomez's brilliant. Well, both pitched perfectly performances. The look of John Sim, the death scene, both death scenes, the banter between them, the mutual respect between them, the relationship with the Doctor, everything about the 2 Masters. An idea that you'd have thought the show would have done before, except it's like my favourite jokes. I always love it when a comedian does a joke and I go, I've thought that, but I've thought it and yet never thought it enough to turn it into a joke or do it or say it out loud. And yet it's so true to me. And I think that with the 2 Masters idea, it's such an obvious idea that the television series has never done it. And it really works. And those 2 are pitch perfect. And I love what it did with the character too. So number 1, I've probably oversaid this, but I've re-emphasised the 2 Masters. Number 2. Number 2. 2 is the scene where the Doctor makes Nardole go away and the Doctor stays, and just everything it does with those characters that is a bit sentimental, that some of it is the sort of stuff we've seen in shows and films before, but there's a reason for that, and it's because they work, and that sort of stuff, I'm afraid, I'm a sucker for. It gets me every time, and it's beautifully written and it's beautifully played, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have scenes like that in Doctor Who, and if they're done that well, and it gives him a great leave, it gives the Doctor and him a great moment between them. I love the fact that they elect to play a lot of it with Nardole with his back turned to the Doctor, and then that, you know, the way that the Doctor wins the argument by going, you know, who's the strongest or whatever, which is, you know, so lovely and sad. That's what I don't think Moffat gets enough credit for. He's really good at sort of making the truth about it, the sad truths about us, you know, observations and part of the drama. You know, I think he's really well wired into that stuff. It's because we get so distracted by the bells and whistles of his excellent dialogue, and, you know, because his sardonic wit makes him seem sort of arch and smart, and I know some people say smug. As I say, having had the pleasure of meeting him and speaking to him on several occasions, he's not. I don't think he's a smug person. I could see why people might think that from his writing, but in the same way that I think I've said this before, sometimes when I write down some of my comedy and people read it and go, it's just really angry, I go, no, because when I say it, I've got a kind of glint in my eye. There's an arch angriness to it. But if you've only ever encountered me as an angry person or whatever, or if you don't know that what I do has a ruefulness, a ruefulness, or a warmth about it, I hope that anger may be taken at face value. Well, it's the same. You know, I see Moffat's, in inverted commas, smugness actually as a defense. He's got a great line in Joking Apart, where, you know, the ex-wife says to the main character, you know, it's not that you use humor as a weapon, it's that you need a weapon. And I think sometimes what, you know, Moffat's characters hide behind a quippy confidence, but it's a mask. It's a mask for vulnerability, because they are all vulnerable. There's a sadness to his Doctors. There's a you know, longing in River Song. There's a brokenness about a lot of his characters. The Master, you know, it's always a front. Don't take it at face value, I think, is the argument. But because I think Stephen Moffat himself is a very clever, witty man, I think he can be misjudged, because, as I say, my experiences of him in person are of a self-deprecating, you know, sort of, you know, some sort of slightly awkward bloke, but who perhaps gets his confidence on the page and with dialogue and character and the stuff that he's really good at, and he is really, really good at it. So yes, the Nardole and the Doctor scene, and the third thing, it's hard, because I was going to go, well, I like the fact that, you know, Bill's resolution works, I think, better than Clara's does, but that you know, that is in relation to the fact that it does really echo Clara's. And then I was thinking, well, and then my overall thing could be that the Doctor's refusal to regenerate. But I do love the bits of him, you know, going through the woods, zapping Cybermen. I find that really exciting, even though I am the Doctor shouldn't have weapons person. That stuff is done really thrillingly. But then, of course, when I think of so many of the bits of that episode that are really good, it's how they're staged, how they're orchestrated, how they're lit. I mean, the lighting, some of those scenes deserves special praise. But the pacing of it, because it is a story that flips between having quite long dialogue scenes that are quite sort of heavy and emotional, but can never lose sight of the fact that this is a base under siege story, and that takes careful orchestrating and planning and balancing. But also it's got some amazing visuals. The action scenes are done really, really well, but also the emotional scenes are so it has to. I think Rachel Talalay has to take enormous credit for the way that the episode holds together and the way that the important things of the episode, happen when they do and how they do. Oh, and then there's those hero moments. Nardole with the space shuttle and the Cyber Bill grabbing the ladder. Love those two bits as well. God, they seem like ages ago they happened. I've been talking for hours. Rachel Talalay, yes, is my third thing, or is she my overall thing? Doesn't really matter, does it? Because he's going to say all four now, so it doesn't matter if my overall thing isn't the same as his overall thing. If our things tally, they don't have to be in a particular order. And then the final thing, because as I said, we know it's an overall thing. Well, maybe I'll choose Rachel Talalay for my overall thing, just so that I'm sad. So I'll choose one more thing from this episode, and that is, I think I like what they do with playing with the regeneration, that it's a regeneration story that doesn't have a regeneration at the end. Because I've said it very recently in terms of minutes in this podcast. It's because we're led to we know things go a certain way, and I love the evocation of Logopolis with all the clips of people saying "Doctor," which I thought was great, and the Doctor looked pretty dead, but that it leads into, and Twice Upon a Time is not perfect by any means, but I love the idea of the departing Doctor reconnecting with the very first Doctor, and that mirrors, as I say, Bill meeting with, water lesbian from her first story, and I love that ending. I love David Bradley coming out of the snow, and I love that I felt David Tennant's regeneration was brazened out a little bit too much for him to be able to, get Captain Jack laid and to get Jessica Hines' autograph and all of that stuff, which was, again, the production team, rightly going, this is momentous because we love this guy and he's a really popular Doctor and this is a big moment. But I felt it was the program perhaps just a bit being consumed by its own mythology there, just a little bit. Whereas this, I think, is going slightly different. I think it's going for something slightly more thematic and interesting about destiny and about letting go and about speaking to one's past self, which can be very moving and very enlightening and very humbling and all sorts of other things. So I think it was a wise and intelligent and use of the format and the tropes of the show that is in keeping with them and yet does something with them that's never been done before and opens up all sorts of other possibilities. So I think the fact that it's a regeneration story without a regeneration at the end that makes us go, oh, where's this going? And ends with the first Doctor, I think is a beautiful thing. So yes, my three things are the Two Masters, Bye Bye Nardole, and I'm Not Going to Regenerate. I'm giving them all chapter headings now. I should have done this since episode 1. Oh no! And my overall thing is the director, Rachel Talalay, who also I've never encountered personally or spoken to or anything, but seems to have embraced fandom and done brilliant interviews and of course has recently been back on the show as well. And amazing having a director from overseas who's done movies, coming to do our show. And I think I think that's really exciting and really fun. And she absolutely nails that episode. I think it's gorgeous, not just how it looks, but how it's paced, how it's composed, how it fits together tonally. And she tells the story, she tells the action, but she's also great with the characters. Oh, it's beautiful. I love that episode. Weird. I've never sort of, as I say, gone back and watched a lot of this over and over and over again. And I've hugely enjoyed both of these episodes. And I think they're triumphant. I think they're magnificent. Let's see what John says. He's done his on separate files, which is very helpful. So his first one for The Doctor Falls.
So the first of the things I really love about The Doctor Falls comes, again, it's quite early in the episode, and as with one of the things I said about the last episode, it's clearly it feels like a bucket list thing for the writer. And it's when the Doctor stands up and says, people get the Cybermen wrong. There's no evil plan, no evil genius, just parallel evolution. Obviously that's a lot of fun because it means they get to talk about this parade of past stories, not all of which are on television. And, it kind of like retcons the fact that there's so many Cybermen origin stories dotted around the continuity now. But I also think it's doing something cleverer than just playing with continuity. In the discourse about Doctor Who, the idea was always that the Daleks were an analogue for Nazis, and the Cybermen are something a bit different. Cybermen are a fear of technology or medical advances or something like that. But with this speech, I think what Stephen Moffat does is he kind of reframes Cybermen as the right-wing mob. It's this spontaneous expressions of inhumanity. It's a sort of much more modern, much more contemporary, much more online view of where horrible far-right politics comes from. And I think that's a very clever thing to do with the Cybermen. And I mean, it's even more amazing that Moffat uses a world shape as reference to do it.
Oh, beautiful. That's obviously cleverer than anything I said. But it is, yeah, and I was I think I talked over a lot of, that's the problem when you do these, is that you miss a lot of the subtleties and things because you keep talking, and obviously anything that's, really pointed up in dialogue or dense dialogue while action's going on around tends to get lost, and that's a good point. I don't disagree with anything as John said. There's no point me trying to re-say it. That's all good stuff. At this point, I usually go, yes, the person that chose the thing chose this, and that's what they said, but you're aware of what they said, and he said it in a clever way, and it was a good thing. And yes, I like the fact that it allows for all sorts of different Cybermen as well, but also, yeah, it does. He's very good, Stephen Moffat, at taking things that we're very familiar with and giving them a really clever spin without actually undermining or contradicting anything we know about them before, but it's just a smart take on them that goes, yeah, well, actually, what this means is this, and you go, yeah, that makes sense. But it's like those jokes I was talking about. I know this, and yet I've never thought it, or I have thought it, but I've never thought it actively. It's been there in my subconscious maybe, but now you've said it out loud. That's made it live and seem actually much more plausible and intelligent than I ever could have done. And he's very good at yeah, as I say, making things sort of assumptions that we have subconsciously sort of breathe, but also comes at them from a different angle, and he's done that with the Cybermen there. John's explained that very well. It's not one of my things, of course. Number 2.
Okay, the second thing from this episode. This is the one that of all the things I've selected, this is the one that I will be shocked if you don't pick this one out. And again, I'm going to give you a line to tell you what it is. It's, we shoot ourselves in the back. The clever way this episode, this story splits the Master into two different characters. Literally two different characters. So they've got one who hates the Doctor and one who just desperately wants his approval. You've got one who's this kind of cackling megalomaniac, and you've got the other, you've got Missy, who just really wants her friend back. And that dichotomy in the Master's character has been there since the very beginning. It's there in 1971 in the way Delgado plays the role as this kind of, he is this kind of dark mirror image of the Doctor, but he's also just the Doctor's friend who just does things to annoy him. And I just think, again, this is a very clever thing Moffat is doing right at the end of his run. He turns the two aspects of the Master into two separate characters, and then they shoot each other in the back and they die laughing hysterically about it. And yeah, it's just a sort of amazing contribution to Doctor Who scholarship and the mythology, really. And obviously, everyone making this knew this wasn't going to be the Master's last appearance. Missy is not dying. Missy is not dead. The Master is going to come back. But oh my god, what a great way to go out if the character didn't.
I think I've said enough about why I love the Two Masters. I think it's one of my favourite things in Doctor Who, full stop. That's interesting because I love everything in old Doctor Who more just because of the nostalgia feel. But no, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm so old now, all Doctor Who is old Doctor Who. But something struck me there in what John was saying about how you have the two different aspects of the Master, one who hates the Doctor and one who wants his approval, and that speaks to me about duality that I think we are losing today. Maybe it's just because I spend too much time on social media, but I'm minded of something I saw somebody tweet when somebody was getting cross or as I say, slightly didactic maybe about how. The bit in The Giggle where when Kate Stewart took off the thing, she exhibited prejudice against Ruth Madeley's character, and the person was saying, "Oh, so is that saying that without the inhibitor, Kate Stewart's a horrible ableist person?" It's going, no, it's being much more intelligent than that. It's going, we all have it within us to think. And my partner's a wheelchair user. I know I probably mentioned this too much, but I need to reiterate it in this context because people do subconsciously, whether they like it or not, think differently of people who look different or exhibit different things. It is kind of part of our wiring. And I say that as somebody whose partner is disabled. I'm not immune to, I think, having those sort of percolations. And I think, and what Russell was doing with that was very cleverly, was saying that, that lurks within us all, even the good, even the very best. So again, it's, and I think if we're not careful, if we listen to the a lot of popular culture discourse that goes on these days and what it expects from what is expected. And as I say, from some very liberal and well-meaning commentators who somehow seem to think that characters in television programs, they are either act a certain way because they're good or they act a certain way because they're bad, and the writer is making them act a certain way to show us good behaviour or making them act a certain way to show us bad behaviour, is a total misunderstanding of what good and bad writing is. Because a good writer writes characters that are good, who do bad things, who are bad, who do bad things for good reasons, and none of it's an instruction manual for how we should live our lives. In showing Kate Stewart as having innate prejudice that all, I think, non-disabled people might have at different subconscious levels and some on very conscious and on the surface levels, but speaks to our wiring and some fundamental truths and some fundamental sadnesses and some things we need to examine and think about. But it's not saying you should do this, you shouldn't do that, this is good, this is bad. It's saying this is a thing that I have observed, this is a thing I am bringing out of my character to tell the story, to tug us in different directions, to make us muse upon the contradictory nature of how we behave and what we think and between what we think and what we say and all of that. Good writing is complicated. Good writing speaks to complication. And really good writing shows complication in a digestible way so that it doesn't do our head in when we're watching it, but it makes us go, oh, God, yeah, I think that, or I think that and I shouldn't, or, oh, that's a guilty pleasure, or, yeah, that's the way I've behaved that I'm not very proud of, or, yeah, that is a good person, but they shouldn't have done that, but I can understand why they did that. And with these two masters, it's almost a way of showing it for this age where you have that sort of commentary on Twitter, which I see lots of examples on about Doctor Who that are quite, as I say, sometimes po-faced or sometimes very interesting, more interested in it being some sort of manual for the ideals of behaviour. It's saying, well, look, here's the same character that is at once somebody who is annoyed with and dislikes the Doctor, and somebody who is sort of kind of loves and envies and wants the approval of the Doctor, and the same person can exhibit both of those things. What Moffat's brilliantly done there is actually have it as two different actors playing the same person, but at the same time. But it's showing, how multifaceted people, in this case Time Lords, but beings are, and the more interesting and the more troubled and the more conflicted beings, which are the ones that we want to watch because they're much more interesting than just watching somebody painting their nails at work or whatever. It's much more interesting if they're painting their eyelashes whilst about to be besieged in a barn by some cyborg people. Anyway, you get the point. I think you do. I've said a lot. But the two masters, chef's kiss. I just hate myself for saying that. See, I could be two things. I think I try and be a fun and interesting and entertaining broadcaster, but I also say things out loud that make me want to shoot myself in the head. Right. John's last thing for the Doctor Falls.
Okay, thing 3 from the Doctor Falls, and it's Nardole's last scene with the Doctor and Bill. It genuinely makes me cry. Not metaphorically, like real tears. I genuinely sort of like my eyes tear up every time. I mean, Matt Lucas has been amazing in this season. Like, he was obviously, he's not a normal companion, is he, Nardole? He's more of a sort of plot function. He's kind of, he's just there to be sort of, I mean, again, there's a literalisation of that in this episode where Missy introduces an exposition and comic relief. I think Nardole is very much comic relief. He was never meant to be a companion. He was a one-off guest star. But Lucas kind of really, the writer kind of embraces that by giving him a sort of different function within the stories. But then Lucas reminds us that he can act, he can do drama. I mean, in Oxygen, there's moments where he doesn't have any lines, but he's reacting to demonstrate the kind of horror of the situation they're in a way that really ups the ante. And here he's just amazing. Like, for most of the episode, he's just being that sort of plot function again. You know, he's like, Nardole, have you been useful? He's found a ship to get them away. He calmly turns a village into an army. At one point, he says, I was just sort of found, which is, again, is a literalisation of where the character came from, out with the fiction. But all this somehow just makes that final scene all the more heartbreaking when the Doctor sends him away, and that his first thought is that he needs to take care of Bill, and then he realises she's not coming either. And just Matt Lucas's delivery of the line, "You're wrong, I never will be able to find the words," which, I'm not an actor, I can't deliver that line, but it's amazing. It's the amount of emotion that they managed to get out of the silly series about time travel. And then later on, we see him just waiting for a lift that he knows is never going to come. And it makes me weep like a baby, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm a bit ashamed to say that, but I'm assuming that if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably had a similar effect on you. I know I'm only allowed 3 things, but just as a bonus thing, just in case, if I was allowed a 4th thing, the fact that the last thing Bill wants to say to the Doctor, her last message to the universe, is a reminder that she only fancies girls. Almost the last thing she does in the series is to remind us that, she's gay. And also to remind the Doctor, come on, mate, not everyone fancies you. Get over it. Which I think, as the 14th Doctor arrives, played by David Tennant and written by Russell T Davies again, it's probably quite a useful message to remember, isn't it?
Very good, John. I think Matt Lucas is superb. And again, that's one of the things I love about Doctor Who, is that you can get somebody who's known for comedy, who comes in and Doctor Who needs good comedy and can do the good comedy, and it's no surprise that they can do the good comedy. But because they are a character in Doctor Who, which requires drama and action and fear and all of those sorts of things, you get to see them do stuff you don't normally get to see them to do. And that all adds to the dissonant nature of the programme, in the same way that you see a police box in a junkyard. You see an actor who you're used to, doing comic turns show emotion, but and in this case also show emotion as a strange sort of alien creature thing as well. So it's emotion, but not quite as we understand it, but it has to be translated by a very good actor into being something that can still move us. And he does all of that, and it's beautiful. And the writing is, of course, superb, and the waiting for the lift that's not going to come is lovely. But yeah, Matt Lucas can do so much with so little, and I love the idea of an actor known for comedy who's also a Doctor Who fan having a key role in Doctor Who. Anyway, but he's absolutely superb, and I think that's beautiful, and he does it really well. And Nardole, even though his contribution was minimised by availability as well, there's some episodes he's hardly in, isn't he? feels like a proper and important part of the show, and has a lovely thread going through. And I think, and I reminded actually, as I think I tweeted something nice about that last scene and included Matt Lucas in the tweet, and a couple of people jumped on and went, "Well, I thought it was rubbish" and all that. And I was drinking at the time, so I think I was a bit drunk on a bus, and I was kind of a bit harsh back to the people, going, and I don't necessarily stand by my harshness, but I stand by the thing of, if somebody's atted in a tweet where somebody's being nice about a thing, go somewhere else and say, that scene, I didn't like it. But don't say it in the one the person's in. Do you know what I mean? Don't do that. Why do I keep going back to Twitter? It doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. And yet it's because you see an injustice written down, because it's tangible, because it's there. You want to correct it. You want to take it on. And again, that's where I see a lot of very nice, decent people, can get a bit too serious and go, I need to address this, and I need to, I need to address all the things that people are wrong thinking and wrong saying about Doctor Who. And actually, the real freedom lies in going, no, let that go. And I had let it go. I'd forgotten all about it, and it reawakened in my mind like a cyber memory. So, yeah, there's one. It's all well and good Bill hanging on to her, her Billness within her head. But actually, there's also something to be said for letting go of some of those things that lurk in the back of your synapses because they're not important. I said that out loud, not to tell you what to do. It was a reminder to myself. But yes, Nardole, particularly that leaving scene, lovely stuff. Well put. John, and John's overall thing is...
My overall favourite thing about this story, the thing that kind of runs through it like words through a stick of rock, is again, it can be summed up by one scene. It's that last scene between the Doctor, the Master, and Missy. And the Doctor says, if I run away today, good people will die. If I stand and fight, some of them might live. Maybe not many, maybe not for long. Hey, maybe there's no point to any of this at all, but it's the best I can do, so I'm going to do it. Again, very much not an actor, very much not Peter Capaldi as I did it, but just to remind you what the line is. And the message conveyed by that, and added to by the fact there's no triumphal music. We've got day for night filming, so the whole thing just looks a bit bleak. There's kind of it really conveys the hopelessness of the situation. But the final message of the Moffat era and of his Doctor, the final take on who the Doctor is and why he's a hero is that even if it's hopeless, even knowing he can't win, even knowing the best outcome is a short-term advantage, saving a few people for a while, he still keeps fighting because it's the right thing to do. And to really hammer that home during the later scene in this final battle with the Cybermen, we get a reprise of the Shepherd's Boy theme from Heaven Sent. Just the use of music in this era was also pretty much amazing. And I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I'm really looking forward to having Murray Gold back, possibly more than David Tennant or Catherine Tate in some ways. I think the last few years have really missed his bombast. Something that I was really in awe of on this rewatch. Stephen Moffat thought his last season would be season 9. So at the end of the season, you get this trilogy of railing against the inevitability of death. And then there's a Christmas special in which the Doctor realises that, he doesn't have to do any of that. Instead of helping save a ship full of mass murderers, he can let them fend for themselves. He can go off and have a nice dinner with his wife. It's perfect. That was meant to be Stephen Moffat's final statement on Doctor Who and why he spent years of his life working on this silly programme. And then he has to drag himself out of retirement and do one last season. And somehow he comes up with an even better ending. One of the things that makes Doctor Who the best thing in the world, really, is that you can kill your hero and you can have them get up and walk away and start again with a whole new story. There's one more Capaldi episode after this. There's one more Moffat episode after this, but that's an epilogue. This is where the era really ends. This is his final statement on the Capaldi Doctor and on Doctor Who more generally. And this guy had been running the show by this point for, depending on how you count, he's done 6 seasons over about 8 years. He's done more Doctor Who than probably anyone else ever has, or quite possibly ever will. And he goes out on this high. And it's not the most popular of positions these days to talk about how great Stephen Moffat was, but bloody hell, he was amazing, wasn't he? Still, times change, and maybe in a few years when Russell is looking to stand down again, maybe, you never know. Can we live in that kind of world now? No, probably not, but I can dream.
Well, rather amusingly, John, since you recorded that, I mean, he's not back as showrunner, but Stephen Moffat is writing for Doctor Who again. I now regret that I didn't choose that Doctor speech, because it is a kind of mission statement for the show, and John enunciated brilliantly why it works. Day for night filming, no music. I think I was so because it's a scene with the two masters. I kind of consolidated all their stuff together as one blob in my voting, but that moment deserves to be taken away from that blob and exist on its own, and I think is a much better choice than my non-regeneration choice, because it is Stephen Moffat, a terrifically talented showrunner, somebody who understands Doctor Who very well, who did some things with it. As I say, I make no apologies for saying that the more sort of complex, non-linear stuff is not hugely to my taste. I admire the cleverness of it, and I think it takes a particular kind of brain to conceive that stuff, and a better brain than mine. And it's a perfectly legitimate thing to do with the show, but I don't warm to it as much as I do more straightforward stuff. But I think the fact that those of us who don't like that aspect, it would be a mistake of ours to think that is all that Moffat is about. And what he's also about is fantastic dialogue, brilliant scares. He's so good at scares and drama and OMG moments, but beautiful at character as well, and sadness, and as I say, taking things that we thought we knew about the show and looking at them from a slightly different actor, suddenly doing a snappy about turn and making us really jolt out of our assumptions and our comfort. He speaks Doctor Who fluently, and then uses words we didn't know we knew, and I think it's true. But I do think John alludes to something very important there as well, was that this final year, which I think was a return to form, or an improvement in form, because I think there are some misjudgments in the Capaldi era. I think having him start off so harsh, I think history tells us was perhaps not the best idea. And I love Capaldi as an actor, but I think the final Capaldi year is my favourite one, which we wouldn't have had if time had gone by in the way that it should have done. And I think to come back and end the way. And end the show for a second time, but in a way that actually works for me better than his first go, it shows a real triumph, because to actually get back up and do something once you think of it, it's like if you've been running and you stop, to then start again is hard, to carry on is even harder, but to do it better than you'd been doing before you stopped, that takes real skill and drive and hard work, and I think those two episodes are as good as anything Moffat did, and I think the 11th Hour is one of the and Blink and all his stuff with that he wrote when Russell T Davies was showrunner are amongst the very best Doctor Who ever. So yes, I think that episode sings of all that is the very best of Stephen Moffat, and I think that mission statement of the Doctor, he's very good at summing up the Doctor's character and the Doctor's beliefs and what the show is all about, in a really illuminating and erudite manner, and in that scene with great drama as well, and great compassion and great. I know humanity is the wrong thing to say about the Doctor, because the Doctor is not human, but I think you know what I mean. And that idea, that very simple idea of it may all be for nothing, but I did my best. That's what the show's not about. Internet people, it's not about telling people how they should behave or what opinions they should have or this, that, or the other. It's actually about doing your best And I think as the lovely late great Paul Eddington said, where they said, "What would you like your epitaph to be?" And he said he did very little harm. Now the Doctor has done harm, but I think has tried to reduce harm where they possibly can. But yeah, I think to do your best, and the Doctor does their best in dreadful circumstances, so we can at least try and do our best and be our best with the circumstances that life throws at us. John is a busy, erudite, and high-achieving man. He's marked this one, John Elledge, self-promotion, as you got self-promo for Toby. Let's see how John is signing off.
If anyone listening would like to find me on the internet, at time of recording, Twitter does still just about exist, and I'm at John Elledge, JONNELLEDGE. I'm also lurking on Mastodon with the same name. Haven't settled on the server yet, but I don't think there are many John Elledges out there, particularly not Johns with two N's. So it should be quite easy to find. Also, you can find my Doctor Who rewatch blog, A Misadventure in Space and Time, on Substack at amist.substack.com. If you'd like to find out about other things I'm doing, I also have like a proper professional Substack where I do actual journalistic things rather than just blather on about Doctor Who, which is at john.substack.com, JONN.substack.com. And yeah, I hope I haven't banged on too long. Oh, also buy my books, they're great.
And a new book is out very soon, and I am going to timey-wimely get John to plug that at the beginning of this as a pre-titles. I don't even know what a Substack is, but that all sounded very exciting. He's a really interesting guy, John. He's an excellent writer. He, again, like Stephen Moffat, really, he can take stuff that one is familiar with or thinks one knows and shine a different light on it or express it in a beguiling, interesting, funny, perceptive way. I'm very glad, my path has crossed with his, and he certainly hasn't banged on too much. I think I perhaps have, and I stutter much more than he does as well. I'm very self-conscious now. Should I go through and edit out all my stutters and ums and ahs? I simply don't have the time. I'm so sorry. So, I've done my best. And after all, that is the message of Doctor Who, and this one in particular. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to now fall on my sword and say, I hope your times and places are very happy, and thanks very much for listening. Well, thanks ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock. My special guest this time around was John Elledge, who, as you heard, can be found on Twitter at John, Jonn, Elledge, ELLEDGE, and he's got a book out right now. I'm grateful to John and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Andrew and Lisa, Catherine Armitage, John Arnold, Kevin Ashelford, Luke Atkins, James Bell, David Bickley, Will Brooks, Gary Byrne, Robin Bland, Robbie C., Alex Kafajoglu, Paul Carnahan, Paul Carrington, Andy Case, John Curley, Mark Dakin, Rob Dawson, John Elledge, Mark Findlay-Smith, Joe Ford, Gary Gillett, Paul Goodridge, Lisa C. Greco, David Green, Fraser Gregory, Paul Gregory, Michael Harvey, Legion Henderson, Dave Hoskin, Richie Howarth, and Robert Jewell. The music is by Dave Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Would you like your name read out on the credits? Well, that is one of the rewards for being a patron of these podcasts. You can do that if you go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where for as little as £3 a month, you get advance releases, bonus material, your own exclusive podcast called Far Too Much Information, plus exclusive monthly AMAs, which, do go on a bit, but they can go on a bit about whatever you'd like them to go on a bit about, and various other goodies as well, a few behind-the-scenes bits and bobs from the work I do on the Blu-rays and the DVDs, etc., and also some of my stand-up. It's mostly Doctor Who stuff, but occasionally I show you some of the stuff I do in real life. And as I say, £3 a month gets you everything. I mean, there are rewards as you go up the tiers, but it's things like badges and extra mentions on the credits and things like that. There's nothing in terms of content that you don't get at the lowest tier, which is £3 a month, and all tiers are eligible for a 10% discount if you sign up for a year in one go. Now, if you don't fancy the monthly or indeed the yearly commitment, you can go and make a one-off contribution at kofi.com/Toby Haydock. There are no bonuses or anything there, just the satisfaction of supporting a starving freelancer. But look, I just appreciate you listening, and I know times are tough and they're getting worse, and the world out there is a horrible battleground. So it's just nice to be here talking about things that are nice, isn't it? And hopefully you enjoy this stuff. And if you do, what costs you nothing at all, bar a little bit of your time, which would be appreciated, is if you go to iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, all the places on the internet where you can leave feedback about these in the form of a few lines of review, letting people know what they're in for and what you like about these, and also 5 stars. A 5-star scoring or rating really helps to propel the head of these podcasts above the parapet, so that passers-by can see them to shoot arrows at. I'm not sure I want my head to be above the parapet. I think that is quite a dangerous metaphor to be involved in, but you get what I mean. There's a lot of Doctor Who content out there, a lot of very good Doctor Who content out there, so anything that points to any reasons people should listen to these is really helpful and makes the work worth the endeavour. So yeah, please, if you could point those out. I haven't had many reviews on iTunes lately, so if you could add to any positive noises, it just helps to give us a bit of a kickstart. So ratings, reviews, and maybe a bit of Ko-fiing or patroning all really helps and is gratefully received. But mostly, thanks for listening. I alluded to the fact that in real life I'm a stand-up comedian, and I am a regular MC at Excess Malarkey Comedy Club in Manchester, which runs every Tuesday. And you know what? Occasionally, the Big Finish War Doctor has been in the audience recently. And last night, as I record this, Joy Wilkinson, who wrote The Witchfinders, was in the audience. I'd never met her before. We'd spoken on the internet, and she'd been to see something I'd done Quatermass related, but we hadn't been able to speak to each other in person. So I met her for the first time, and she was in the audience. So and actually, in the same audience last night was Nigel Neal's biographer Andy Murray, sitting only a few rows in front of the writer of The Witchfinders. So the War Doctor wasn't in last night, but he has been in quite a lot this year. So, I mean, it's all go at Excess Malarkey. But Doctor Who and sci-fi people aside, it's a really good comedy night. And like all the stuff I do, I try and keep the prices as low as possible. Try and make it as accessible and friendly and easygoing as possible. Don't let in stag do's, hen do's or office parties. It's a nice comedy-savvy crowd who are there for the right reason. And it's on a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. in Manchester. And it has a Twitter feed, which is at Excess Malarkey. There's a Twitch channel as well, which hasn't been updated recently, but there is a lot of the stuff that we did during the pandemic, which was get loads of comics together. That's at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. I am thinking of ways of adding videos to that. I have my own feed as well on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Toby Haydock. These podcasts have their own feed at Haydock Podcasts. I also have a Facebook page, and I also am on Instagram at Toby.Haydock, where I'm experimenting quite successfully, I think, with making videos showing what has gone on the previous few occasions at Excess Malarkey, and other bits and bobs as well. Sometimes a few insights into, again, the backstage stuff of the Blu-ray and DVD documentaries and commentaries. So that's all the social media. Avail yourself of it if you like, or because there isn't a book about me. We haven't. I don't exist in the old ways, only in the new modern spheres. I'm not going to say much for the post credits bit because this has been really long, and I'd intended to go to bed hours ago. However, I didn't make much of a thing of the fact that I was close then. I know it's averaged out over both episodes when it's a two-parter of Modern Who. But I should have got more excited. I should have upped the drama. I should have done what that episode did very well, which is have a sense of occasion and building to a climax. Because at one point there, John and I, of the three things that he chose for that episode, we chose the two masters and we chose Nardole's leaving scene. So I was actually 2-1 up at one point, and then he chose his overall thing and didn't choose Rachel Talalay. But nonetheless, so actually, even so, and as I say, averaged over the two parts, I didn't get anywhere near. But for that instalment, and it's such a rare occurrence, actually, in this post-credits sequence, you can tell it's a post-credit sequence because I said the word "post" credits, and I'm not going to correct it because it's too far gone. And, frankly, as Tobias Vaughan says, anyone who's in those sewers deserves to die. Anyone who's listening to a post-credit sequence deserves the odd mispronounced word. I am going to claim that that's a tie because... and actually it's only a tie because his overall thing didn't match mine. But of the episode itself, of the three things we chose, two of them were in common. So that could even almost be a win. So historians, archivists from the future who are chronicling every last moment of Toby Hadoke's time travels, don't worry, people without a sense of humour. I know there will be no such thing. I'm being I'm exaggerating to comic effect. Well, if you're going to do that, it has to be funny. Yes, all right. But I think it could be said that I mean, I could have won that episode if we don't take the bonus. If we ignore the bonus thing, because I'm not sure there's supposed to be a bonus thing. Anyway, I think it's just supposed to be for a two-parter, isn't it? It's just supposed to be a 3 and a 3. I've even forgotten the rules now. In which case, I can definitely chalk it up as some sort of win, even in a subsection of the rules. Look, I'd just like to point out that of the three things for that episode, I chose two of the same things as John. That is quite rare, and that's made me very happy, and I wish I'd made more of it in the episode itself. But I was actually trying to wrap that episode up quickly because as I was just uploading John's bits up onto my computer, I got a message. I got a message from the comedian Jason Manford, and I wanted to reply to it because I hadn't heard from him for ages. So there we go. There's a big clang. Never mind the Cybermen noises. There's a big clang of a dropped name. And that's why you hang around till the very end. But that's also why I think I had my eye on getting to the end of the episode and wrapping it up, because I wanted to reply to Jason. Because not just because he's famous, but because he was offering to do something very helpful for me. But it meant that I actually was slightly skewed from the fact that the whole point of this podcast is for me to guess the same things as my guest, and I did that quite a lot on this occasion, and I didn't even bloody notice. Oh well, I did my best.